expert conversations from the world of cybersecurity. It's the Cyber Circuit, powered by Insight Jam.
Hello and welcome to episode number 2 of Cyber Circuit, Insight Jam's place for all things cybersecurity. I'm your host, Ryan Daly, and let's welcome back to the show from Dave Blink Consulting, Michael Morgenstern. Michael, good to see you again.
Great to see you, Ryan.
And for the first time on the show, our guest today, we've got Eric O'Neill, cybersecurity expert, public speaker, and upcoming author of the, currently an author of the upcoming book, I should say, Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime. Great to have you on the show, Eric.
Ryan, it's great to be on the show, and Michael, good to meet you.
Excellent. So, before we get started, of course, the show is on YouTube. So what kind of host would I be on YouTube if I didn't demand that you go right down below and hit like, subscribe, all those great things so you can get updated on the next Cyber Circuit coming out and all the great content that we have here on Inside Jam. And now that you've done that, I'm going to ask you, Eric, since it is your first time on the show, could you give us a little bit of your background to sort of, what angle you're coming to the world of cybersecurity from? What got you into it?
Certainly, Ryan. I have quite an atypical way of getting into cybersecurity. My background is actually in counterintelligence for the FBI. I was an undercover operative, aka a ghost. My job was to investigate, surveil, and target either spies, that's the counterintelligence side, or terrorists operating here in the continental United States. The biggest area that I protected was the DC area, so that could be anywhere from Richmond, Virginia, all the way up to Baltimore. So either spies or terrorists. And I learned the science of counterintelligence, which is the science of stopping the espionage goal of foreign intelligence units. But it could also be trusted insiders, or what we called moles here in the United States. I did that for a number of years. My claim to fame is the final case that I went undercover to investigate in the FBI, which was the Robert Hanssen investigation. If you know your history, Robert Hanssen was a 25-year veteran FBI supervisory special agent who, it turned out, spied so long he spied for the Soviet Union and then Russia for 22 years. And I was tasked to go undercover in the most unique case the FBI had ever run, which was in FBI headquarters to essentially be part of one of the greatest mousetraps in FBI's history, where we gave him his dream job, put a lot of intelligence in front of him and hoped he made a drop. And I was able to find the smoking gun before he made that drop so we could catch him red-handed. So if you're really interested in that story, you can read my first book, Great Day, or read the book and then go watch the movie, Universal's movie Breach, which is about me and how I was able to go undercover and catch Robert Hanssen.
Excellent. Yes, do read the book first.
Cybersecurity. How do you get that from being a spy hunter? The science of catching spies leads itself to cybersecurity, I think, more than any discipline, because right now, whether it is a cyber spy conducting cyber espionage or a cyber criminal, the tactics are the same. The only difference is the outcome. So in many ways, it takes a spy hunter in order to catch these incredibly clever and sophisticated threat actors. And I like to use the word threat actor, cyber spy, cyber criminal, cyber attacker. You won't usually hear me use the word hacker because to me, I'm a hacker. Michael's a hacker, right? We're the good guys. Most of the people I know who were hackers back in the 80s and 90s are now working for cybersecurity companies. The bad guys are something more and different. And so I like to elevate people's thinking. So I come from a counterintelligence background. And what I've always liked to say is that I bring counterintelligence to cybersecurity. I also have a computer background and discipline. I was one of those hackers way back when. I don't really put my hands on keyboards much anymore. Now I'm more in the thought leader space. But I do come from that discipline, and I was able to take those two bits of my background and put them together to change the way we think about cybersecurity.
Absolutely fascinating. I do remember the Robert Hanssen case. You said that name. I quick looked it up. It's like, yes, that photo. I have seen this. So do check out the book. First book, always better than the movie. Absolutely fascinating stuff. And I think, as you mentioned, you're probably the first ghost, former or otherwise, that we've had on the network here. So
yeah, and I'll be
great
the
to
only
have you
one.
on.
It's very hard to
that we
find
know
any
of.
us.
I'll make
As
you,
the name would indicate.
I'll make you cringe for a half a second as we get to know each other, Eric. In preparation for today, I said to somebody on my research team, so Eric was instrumental in the Robert Hanssen case, and he said, "Who?" Oh, and I said, "What do you mean? It was just a few years ago." And then I had to look it up to see how long it actually was ago.
Right. Yes. It was a while ago. It was, we caught Hansen in 2001. It was February 2001. It was the Sunday before, the President's Day weekend then. And then, of course, it was the biggest thing in the news forever until, that other event, just destroyed all news, which was September 11th.
I was advising an agency at the time. It was big news.
Yeah, it was
Big,
really
big
big.
news.
And that case is still taught in every intelligence, every intelligence education school, policy division in catching the trusted insider. The importance of being diligent, to someone inside your organization who chooses to betray it.
Yeah, it's not our topic for today, but insider threat has only gotten worse and worse.
You know, in my book Great Day, I talk about what I coined a phrase, virtual insider. So a virtual insider threat and a virtual trusted insider. The idea that it's much less worrying about the Robert Hansons in your organization who decide that they're going to sell out to a corporate competitor or Russia or China or whatever. It's the more damaging and the more prevalent attack is that person's credentials, which have been stolen for some reason or uh, by some tactic, and now that person unwittingly is a virtual trusted insider, stealing from within the organization, and they have no idea it's happening because their account is being puppeted by an external threat actor. And so, that right there is all cybersecurity, and the majority of those attacks happen through social engineering. And so what I try to do is move people's minds away from the idea that what criminals and spies are doing is, typing away at their keyboard, and somehow magically they're able to just get into to the systems of some target or company or agency. What they're actually doing is they're targeting people, which is why it all goes back to espionage. They're using the same tactics of reconnaissance. They might learn this person's a systems engineer because I looked through LinkedIn and I found that this is my target organization, and here are all the people who work in IT, and I'm going to target all of them. Now I go on their social media and I've learned everything about them, and I'm going to use AI to craft the perfect spear phishing email that resonates with them and gets them to trust and do something they shouldn't. And sometimes it's a phone call. And now more than ever, attackers, knowing that people are getting a little wiser to not clicking links or opening attachments, it'll say, call us in this told 1-800 number, and you call a dark web cybercrime call center, and this very pleasant, educated person talks you through the things that you shouldn't do, like downloading a new app that gives them access to your system. So they're getting more and more clever, and we in cybersecurity have to continue to stay apace with them.
The lights that are flickering behind my eyes as you keep picking topic after topic after topic of that's currently super hot. The one that is most hot right now that you just got me thinking about is the insider threat related to North Korea, and
Yeah.
how they're using AI for everything, including video fakes to represent themselves as Americans.
Well, North Korea, they are robber barons. That's the best way to describe how they're continuing to keep their economy afloat. They steal cryptocurrency, and they're incredibly adept at it. And what you're talking about, Michael, is actually incredibly clever. When I saw that, they are creating deepfake full avatar employees with backgrounds. Now, what they're doing is that the people don't exist, but they're seeding these, very attractive backgrounds into social media. And what HR is doing is moving so quickly and hiring remote employees. They're believing it without verification. Now, I run a company called the Georgetown Group that does competitive intelligence. And so we can work with organizations to vet every person you're hiring. Nobody actually does it unless it's like the C level. At these lower levels, organizations are hiring people because their resume looks impeccable. Their background and education look impeccable. They might run like some quick criminal check, and often what they're doing is they're using names of identities they're buying on the dark web. So that comes back clean, right? Because it is a real person, and they're getting hired. And it's not just getting hired to get into the systems; they're getting hired and they have a physical person who's doing the work, sometimes doing a little work to just stay hired, but really what they're doing is just using that access to steal terabytes of information from organizations. So you can think of all the different ways things are failing, right? Not doing your diligence when you hire individuals to make sure they're actually a real person with the skills that they say that they have. Like anybody can lie about their resume. And then having systems and networks that allow someone access to things that they shouldn't be accessing, right? We call that in cybersecurity segmentation, right? You don't want everyone to have access to everything, because then if you have a spy, then you've lost everything. So, you should only have access to the things that you need to access. What, in James Bond, they call it for your eyes only, or need to know. And then alerts that aren't going off when terabytes of information are leaving the organization somehow externally to somewhere else in the world. So, you can see where all the failures are, but there are, I guess the bright side of things are there are solutions for all of this. It just requires a little bit of work and a lot of diligence.
Your upcoming book, Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime, says students to C-suite execs will take up arms in the coming cyber war. I recently co-authored the Cloud Security Alliance's Agentic Red Teaming Guide, listing a variety of relatively easy agentic attacks. Taking up arms seems to be getting easier and easier. So what does it mean to you? Is this, what is it? Do we need to bolster defenses? Are we getting better or worse at exposing attack campaigns? Is this going to help defense more than offense more than defense? Where are the biggest barriers here?
So what I wanted to do in writing the book, my goal was to write a book that will be read, right? First of all, it reads like a thriller. There's a through story that is myself in the center of a cyber attack. So you can actually follow how this thing happens from my eyes. I like that first person because it really pulls you into a story. And then each of the lessons that I provide are in stories of actual attacks and scams. I'm focusing on cybercrime in this book. And what I want to do, and in the entire thing I wrote was to join the cyber war and not stand by while the village burns around you, right? In other words, take up action. And what I came up with two methodologies that are based with training that began in my career at the FBI Academy. I want people to learn to think like a spy. That means recognize the attacks as they're happening, before they're happening, and know that this is an attack. And then learn the tools and tactics to act like a spy hunter to stop the attacks. So what I'm really doing is pulling back the curtain of counterintelligence and teaching you to think like a counterintelligence officer so you can't be scammed, so you recognize the scam. And one of the most amazing things about the book for me as an author is all of my beta readers have come back. And these are people that are in industry. These are grandparents. These are teenagers. These are not people that are steeped like we are in cybersecurity and the science of it. All of them have come back and said, someone tried to scam me, but I read your book and I remember chapter 8 and I stopped it. And that's what I want. And that's how we do this, by educating everyone from your teenager. And I think there are really critical chapters in the book for parents to have their teenagers read, if it's just this chapter, to help protect yourself from the predations of cyber criminals on social media in particular, and all of the content that's being consumed by our young adults, all the way up to cybersecurity professionals and CEOs. There's something in there for everyone in order to protect yourself, your organization, your future, your children, your bank account, your all the things that matter to you. In other words, the data that has now become the currency of our lives. And so when I say take up arms, I'm saying that we need to not just play defense. It's not enough anymore. That what we actually have to do is become threat hunters. We have to go out and search for the attacker. What I say is hunt the threat before it hunts you, because the attackers are coming after us. And if we're not actively looking for them, they're going to get right by us. And when we talk about cybersecurity, in the last number of years, it's moved from let's defend to let's assume they will get in at some point, but catch them the moment they're in and have the systems and controls necessary to collapse security around them and minimize the damage. That's really what we're doing now. Because our footprints now in how we're networked and connected, especially after that thing no one talks about anymore, remember? That thing that changed the whole world, the pandemic, right? You say that now and nobody wants to hear it. We don't even have movies or TV shows about it. But it happened and it changed how we work. You know, a number of years ago, I would have come to a studio and sat down with you and we do this podcast around microphones, but now we can do this from anywhere in the world. I do entire keynotes to thousands of people, tens of thousands of people sometimes, from my home studio. We're in this uncanny valley of connections and networking and work from wherever, which leads to things like the North Korea attack you introduced, where trust becomes so important. And in that massive footprint of sharing information, it's really easy to lose security and allow someone to get in. So we need to see them as soon as they do get in.
Want more Inside Jam? Subscribe to our YouTube channel for shorts, panels, podcasts, and more. In your Shorts feed, enjoy a daily dose of best practices from tech experts and leading solution providers, while long-form panel discussions and keynotes, recorded live every quarter, go deep on important industry topics. And don't miss our collection of regular podcasts, keeping you informed on the latest trends. We're hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so subscribe to be notified of our next upload. Now, let's get back to the show.
So your background in the public sector fascinates me as somebody who actually tracked threats on your feet, not just at your keyboard, right? So it's a different lens of the people I most often surround myself with. And I lead a bunch of red teams and support a bunch of red teams. But let's talk about your red teaming lens a little. I think we have an interesting overlap. The next step of threat hunting is threat reenactment, essentially, red team the infrastructure. And, one of the themes of this podcast is the coming trends associated with AI. Let's connect all of that. I mean, what are you seeing? What are you seeing trend wise around red teaming, around AI, around threat hunting, and those intersections?
Well, let's start with red teaming. It is a critical part of a strategy that I outlined in the book called PAID, which is prepare, assess, investigate, and decide. And red teaming is right in prepare. You can't know where the attack is going to come from unless you've tested your systems. And so a good red team will conduct a vulnerability assessment and try and break in. And by doing that, be able to say, here's how I got in. Here's how an attacker would do it. And these are the things that you need to do to shore up these defenses and ensure that if someone does land here, you can find them quickly, or you can prevent this exploit that I found because you didn't patch this system. Or the basic things sometimes are the most important. For example, so many breaches happen today because an organization is just relying on a password. I've been on a tear lately about how passwords are useless, and they're all for sale on the dark web, which is the marketplace, the evil marketplace of the internet, where you can buy and sell anything to do evil and bad things. But all our usernames and passwords are for sale there. So if an organization isn't leveraging two-factor authentication, or even if they are, but they forget to delete an account when an employee leaves, cyber criminals are just buying usernames and passwords and getting in. A red team can find those mistakes, those accounts that haven't been deleted, and the person's long gone, but their account is still active, and it could still allow an external predator to get in. Deepfakes are changing the whole world, and deepfake training now is a huge and growing part of a vulnerability assessment. People have to realize that trust has become an uncommon commodity. Trust is now the holy grail for cybersecurity. What I've been saying for the last year or so is that cybersecurity actually has to restore trust. That's what it has to do. Because deepfakes have changed the game for everything from spear phishing to phone text phishing to actual FaceTime calls where you think you're talking to the CEO of your company, but you're actually talking to a Chinese cyber spy or a very brilliant Russian cyber criminal. who's cloned your boss and is now telling you to send a wire. Not an email, with instructions that we've trained away, but actually having a FaceTime call with someone you think is your boss, but it's just a very clever AI avatar. I outline a story of how this happened right in the beginning of my book to a Silicon Valley organization. It's making it much more difficult because we're in a place now where we can't even trust our eyes and ears, where we essentially have to have a second level of verification for even the conversations we have, right? Call my agent. Is that really Eric I'm talking to on this podcast, or is, it a very clever deepfake? He's on vacation. Maybe he's deepfaked himself so he can just be in his bathing suit from the beach. But these things could actually happen. We always have to verify before we trust. That old trust but verify. Today, going forward, we have to flip that on its head.
Various countries and blocks of countries around the world are thinking through this differently. We now have relatively light regulation of models in the US. At least I'm not expecting any meaningful legislation. Europe's going the other way, as it often does, and specifically trying to regulate AI, classifying risks in different buckets, the results of which we haven't seen yet. And China has been China, right, doing everything they can to dominate the information space, launching a competitive model, launching essentially a competitive internet space,
Right.
and then training the next generation of quasi-government offensive, I'll say, actors, engineers. How does this, back to my question around intersection? So now I'll add another variable, and we've got the hostile government angle here, which is why I was so excited to have you on today.
Well, we're in the center of an
Tell all
AI
the
arms.
defenders what they're not thinking about yet.
Right. Well, we're absolutely in the center of a storm that is an AI arms race, and every country is involved, and not just countries. Dark web cyber criminals are developing their own AI. Don't forget them, and that can be just as damaging as a Russia or a China. Some of the top dark web syndicates are leveraging AI in extraordinary ways, and remember, that's AI with no guardrails whatsoever. It will answer or provide you the most horrible, obscene thing that you can request with it. If you try that with ChatGPT, somebody's recording that somewhere and it'll respond, I'm sorry, I can't do that, right? And the dark web right now, just in size, I know I'm popping into a slight aside, but I will get right back. I promise, Michael. The dark web right now, just the cost of cybercrime through the dark web, it is more than $12 trillion. That was last year's number. And by 2026, it'll be 20 trillion. So if you grant the dark web some sort of virtual borders by economy, by GDP, its gross domestic product, which is cryptocurrency stolen from people through cybercrime, it is now the third largest economy on earth. It goes the US, China, and then the dark web. And by 26, if China keeps going down and the dark web keeps going up, it might be the second. So, dark web AI really worries me. And so does foreign counterintelligence AI being leveraged against us. And, AI is also critical to cybersecurity. So we have to plug all that together. You have to use AI to match the speed of threat actors who are using AI. So cybersecurity is leveraging the best in breed AI, at least the best cybersecurity companies are using it in order to match the speed of attacks, if you will. And we also need to start leveraging AI to find out whether something's a deepfake or not. And right now, it's not particularly good at deciding whether something is a deepfake or not if you use it. But I think the technology has to advance to the point where all of our devices, whether it's your phone or your laptop or your iPad, anything that you're going to receive a communication from or through, is going to have a layer of technology on it that is going to say whether this is real or synthetic. It's just how it's going to have to be. So we're going to have to, that means that technology is going to have to get faster. Batteries are going to have to last longer because you're going to always have to be running this application that's just trying to determine whether something is AI or not. To make matters worse, if you look at what's happening on the internet today, in the content that we read, in what we see, in what we're scrolling through or watching on YouTube or going through Instagram Reels or Facebook's similar. So much of it is synthetic to the point where most experts agree, and I agree with them, that by next year, 26, 90% of what we see on the internet will be synthetic. Think about that, and it's already happening. If you read articles people are writing, if you look at so much of the content that our kids are consuming, it's all made with AI. Some of it's funny and some of it's silly, but is it useful? Does it push forward, the human condition in any positive way? I'm not sure. I mean, I'm a writer and I still write my own things. I might use AI to help me with things like research. And my favorite thing to use it for is, can you please give me 5 hashtags for this? Because I really hate coming up with those. But I pride myself on writing my own content. I can spot when someone has written by AI, and most of what I see now is written that way. So what happens when AI is replacing humans in the things that we read and see? It all becomes the same. And we kind of move into that movie Idiocracy, if you remember that, where we're relying on machines to do all our things for us. AI is being, to bring it right back to the foreign counterintelligence threat, AI is being used to provide spies in these other countries these almost perfect, you just call them, for lack of a better term, spear phishing attacks, where we're using deepfake AI to fool us. This is being used in politics, and you can bet in the US midterms coming up and in that presidential election in 2028, I can't even tell you how much of it is going to be seeded by other countries, from primarily China and Russia. They always launch attacks on our elections that are going to cause mayhem and mischief as people decide who they're going to vote for.
And let me take it in a slightly more technical direction for a moment. Along with the rise of AI over the last few years, we now have the rise of AI assisted coding, right? Vibe coding. A bunch of my colleagues just came back from a recent OWASP talk that was highlighting LLM model inability to consistently produce secure code, or even close security risks it identifies itself. Meaning, if you ask it to resolve the security issue, because it established the security issue, we just knock over the house of cards and create new errors and new issues and down the rabbit hole. Now, granted, we're still in early days of this. I'm sure it's going to get better, but the question in my mind is, how much of this becomes technical debt before it gets better?
Right. Well, some of that is how AI learns and how it proceeds, but it does move at somewhat of an exponential pace in how the technology is evolving, which almost faster than we can prepare for. I told my kids, and they all have an interest in engineering, that you may not actually have to code. They're learning Java right now, right, in high school. You might not actually have to do a lot of this, but you will need to know how it works and how to code so you can QC what the AI is writing. If we want to pull it back to the dark web cyber criminals are using AI to scale their operations. They don't have to hire as many coders if they can use AI to do the basic coding for them, to look for zero-day attacks, to create novel malicious software, and then their programmers can come in and clean it up. Right? That takes you all the way down the road. You don't have to do all the basic work when the AI can do it for you, and you can use your knowledge as a human to clean up the mistakes that the AI inevitably makes. But as AI trains, it will get better at this, better and better. So you can see that happening in the future, and I think you hit the nail right on the head. That right now, maybe it's not so great, but it is still pretty great from just what we had a year ago.
I'm going to keep switching because there's so many of these interesting concerns. Let's talk. Shadow IT has been the bane of organizations and CIOs everywhere forever. Now there is the race to enable AI across every business that can possibly enable AI, and many that don't know how or never try anyway. So we're getting shadow AI across organizations. And as a security professional, this one scares me because
Right.
in order for AI to work effectively, it needs ever and ever greater access. So we've got shadow AI with the users incented to provide more and more and more access. And then along comes security and says, "Wait, no, slow down, hold up," and we're moving at internet speed, not at legal speed.
Right. Well,
What are you seeing?
that's one of the problems with agentic AI, and people are going to move more and more into it as they see how powerful it is. The problem there is that in order to use an AI agent that understands you and understands your processes and has access to all your data and applications, and then your credit card, and goes out and does something for you like a living executive assistant would, right, in a fraction of the time. Well, you have to give access to uh, a a system that's running somewhere on someone else's servers on the cloud, and is going to make all these connections on its own, right? You can see where not just like the minimal effect would be data leakage. You've just lost data, and it's now being used by processes that you don't want it to be used for, and someone could scoop it up. Data brokers are notorious for grabbing as much of that as they can. And you see what happens to all of their databases. They get hacked, stolen, and then posted on the dark web for people to buy from. But also the potential exploits that bad actors could use to get into your systems. And that's just sort of on a personal level. Now you take that to a corporation or a business or an agency, and there has to be some level of control of how employees are deploying AI or using it. And the problem for these companies are they know that if they don't come up with an AI system that they have some semblance of control over, the employees are going to all go use their own AI, like commercial versions that now they're taking confidential memos and documents and plugging it into AI to have it rewrite. This happens time and again to organizations, and now that's lost. It's out in the world somewhere, and you've basically just published your intellectual property, and a competitor could get it. It can be used for bad by bad actors to do bad things, and so organizations have to find a way to allow their employees to leverage AI that's controlled. But the technology is so new that no one's quite figured that out yet in a way that is stable and allows cybersecurity to understand. And that's why sometimes as new technologies are developed, uh, it's almost like we rush forward without cybersecurity understanding it. Like I'll give you a great example. That I think that people can understand very quickly. When the pandemic hit and we were all thrown in our homes, we can get into it, but kind of irrationally, and working from home and trying to figure out how to do it. From routers that weren't secure, and sometimes from your phone or your iPad, and sometimes people had computers, and sometimes they didn't. And we were all using this new technology that no one had really adopted called Zoom, right? And people immediately, the bad guys immediately figured out that if we can just jump into these Zoom conferences, we can create all sorts of mayhem. Because, and I don't just blame Zoom, Teams, anything that you were using, we were using it too fast. And before cybersecurity really had a chance to say, wait a minute, we need to put some controls in here to protect people. So you were getting Zoom bombs, and you were getting where people would just show up in your meeting, right? And it just sort of as a joke. But you were also getting people who would pretend that they were people supposed to be in the meeting, and they would put links in these virtual conferences that would basically be like a virtual conference spearfish, and say, hey, everybody, quickly go to this website that I found for, the topic we're discussing, and people would click on it and then get breached. This is what's happening with AI right now. We're deploying it before cybersecurity is ready to make it safe.
I've been saying the sky is falling for so long. I'm glad to hear somebody else saying something similar.
Well,
Um,
I like to. I also use AI tactically, right, and mindfully. It's a tool, like anything is a tool, and If you're using a screwdriver wrong, you're going to get hurt with it. AI is just like magnifying that, right? And we need to be careful. It's not the solution to everything. It isn't where all of your most important things belong. And like I said, I give you three ways two more ways that I use AI in a safe and I think useful way, where I'm not losing my data. In addition to hashtags, which I hate, right? I use AI to do research. For example, it's great at taking a ton of links when I want to write a story and I'm just trying to put it together in my head. And I'll throw 10 links in there and say, this is kind of what I'm thinking from these stories. Help me flesh it out and give me, 10 ideas. I mean, that's a great way just to get your mind kind of moving, right? And then I go take a walk and it comes to me and I sit down and I type it up. And it also can be a great editor if you're writing an article, you know? You save the time of going to a human editor and waiting for them to get back to you. It can move pretty quickly. That's simple. You're not going to lose all your data that way. You're not letting an external attacker in, but it's making you faster and more efficient. And that's how it can be used safely. It's when you rely on it to do everything that you get into trouble.
Unlock better leads through Solutions Review events.
Welcome to Data Demo Day. Expert Roundtable, Solution Spotlight featuring Monte Carlo, Cohesity, Denodo, Cloudflare, High Gear, Broadcom, Next Things.
Boost your brand with a webinar that shares comprehensive use cases, real-time product demos, and an interactive Q&A. All broadcast live to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Zoom from our Boston studio, or even on location. Fill your sales funnel with high-quality targeted leads. And contact us today by visiting solutionsreview.com/virtual events.
Let me ask, in an area that I've been researching and fascinated with in AI and cyber for the last 2 years, new attack methods are constantly being developed and deployed, just like they were before AI. AI is just making it easier, faster, and frankly lower skilled. Though I've been railing on that soapbox for 25 years, as everything has made it easier, faster, and less skill required. But AI is a step change in this. What do we need to do to stay ahead of the curve, stay ahead of the attackers? And
Right.
please, like, if you've got, I am still so fascinated by the human aspect of your background. Like, I'd love to hear about how you did this, in the service.
Right, exactly. I mean, getting ahead. Well, AI, that's, what you were saying right there is exactly what I was talking about a little earlier in our conversation about how AI allows cyber criminals, for example, to scale their operations, right? Because, in the difference between a foreign intelligence service where you have individuals who are very sophisticated and well-trained and are paid a salary, right? So they just attack and they quietly try to steal information. What spies have been doing forever, and they get paid whether they win or lose. They're trying to win, obviously, for their country. Criminals don't get paid unless they win. So all they care about is winning, and they will use any cheap trick they can. And that's why cyber criminals in particular are leveraging, scaling, learning, developing, and working with AI more than any other bad guy out there. Because it allows them to move much faster sometimes than cybersecurity. When I hunted spies on the street, we had to think like them. We had to know who they were. We had to, I talk about I write this newsletter every week, and it just, the one that just came out yesterday was my 4 rules of surveillance, right? Know your target, know your environment, blend, and then expect the unexpected. Hunting a spy is a lot like hunting a cyber criminal or a cyber spy. You have to know who you're going after. You have to know your target. If I was following someone on the street, I would really like to know where they like to shop, where they like to eat, do they like coffee or tea? Do they really like Starbucks? Because if I've lost them, I'm going to start looking for every Starbucks in the area, right? Especially if it's about the time of day that they need that second cup of coffee. Know your environment. Where are you working? If you want to take that in the physical sense, what city am I working in? Am I in a rural place? Am I, in the middle of Washington, D.C.? Am I near the monuments? All of that is a different way of moving, acting, and portraying yourself. In a cyber environment, what environment are you trying to protect, or what environment is the threat actor coming from? Because they're going to operate differently, whether they're coming from, a foreign intelligence service in North Korea, or a cybercrime group out of Russia or China. And then, of course, blending into situations. Being a ghost means that if you look at me, you don't think that I'm a threat. And if you see me 3 times during the day, I look completely different. That's what deepfakes are, right? They're just trying to fool you, exploit trust, give you something that you see or hear that you believe and trust in order to fool you into doing something that you otherwise wouldn't do, which is what criminals have been doing since the first time someone tricked somebody into a scam. And then finally, expect the unexpected. In cybersecurity and cybercrime and espionage, that's the name of the game. It's that shell game. It's look over here, and then the bad hack happens here. So we always have to be ready, and we always have to be ready to adapt to the situation in order to win the war on cyber.
I'm a huge fan and early adopter of agentic, but we all need to still take deep breaths and consider the security implications. My takeaways from this great conversation, Eric, things I learned from you today: the spectrum of those taking up arms is getting broader. Verify, then trust is the right way for the phrase to go. And know your target environment, blend and expect the unexpected. You've given me, and hopefully all of our viewers, lots to think about going forward.
Thank you so much for all that, Eric. I could on the agentic note, I'll say that on the Inside Jam channel here, we've had this year so much conversation around agentic AI, where it can be deployed in different industries and things like that. I think this note, in reference to all of that, to take it easy a little bit and think about where that information is going, is not something that's come up as much. So
Right.
I think the synthesis of all that information, please take some of this information when deploying your agentic AI, because it will take that information and run, and it'll be accessible to somebody somewhere, and you might not know who.
That's critical. And also, look, involve your cybersecurity. And if you don't have your internal CISO, get a consultant to come in and help you with this, because cyber always has to be part of the decision-making process up front. You can't tack it on at the end. If you try to do that, then you end up having to unwind these things that you tried to build. If you bring cybersecurity in the beginning, then they can help guide the discussion and the technology in a way that is safe, whether that's more training, whether it's a layer of technology. But with AI, that is critical, because organizations are experiencing massive data loss because employees are using AI incorrectly. And they're uploading full things that they shouldn't to the AI to get them to do the work for them.
Especially, AI, you don't necessarily know how it works, and that's part of the greatness of it. But when you don't know how it works, you don't know how safe it is necessarily. So, Michael, Eric, before we get going here, Michael, we'll start with you. Anything you'd like to plug? Where should people look for you? What you're working on, writings, anything like that?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Daywin's a boutique consultancy focused on the intersection of cyber automation and cloud. So we've built and automated smarter and smarter processes. We were soon leading the charge for cyber automation across many of our clients. These days, lots of those efforts are focused on AI. You can find us at www.dablingconsulting.com.
Yeah,
right.
Eric, where should people look for you and everything that you're working on?
Sure. The best place to find me is in my personal professional website, which is www.ericoneil, ERICONEILL.net. And you can find my book, my first book, Gray Day, there. Of course, right now I'm pitching my second book, Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime, which really goes into everything we talked about in the podcast today and more. And you can pre-order it now. That book is going to be released by HarperCollins on October 7. And if you want to read some of my writing and a lot of what's going on in my head and talking about AI and deepfakes and cybersecurity, I have a newsletter that I started a year ago called Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime. Same title as my new book. The publishers liked it so much, we decided we're going to stick with that. And you can get there with ericoneil.net /newsletter. And please do subscribe. It's free to you, and it's a great community of individuals that are thinking about these things. And we have great discussions on there as well.
Excellent. And we'll have all those links right down below in the description. So do check those out. And of course, hey, while you're down there, if you haven't already, you made it this far, so I think you like the show. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and catch us on the next Cyber Circuit. Michael, Eric, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was great to have you. It was a fascinating conversation. And
Thank
we
you.
look forward to having you back sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. We'll talk soon.
Powered by Insight Jam.